Hey guys, the power actually went out at my house today, and I was thinking I'd do the review later when it came back on, but I figured it's a horror movie, why not just do it like this? It can make it way spookier. the hell was that? Hello? So I decided to wait until the power came back on. Hello ladies and gentlemen and movie lovers of all kind, and welcome back to another Super Series Tuesday. For today, we will be starting a brand new series, and that is the Conjuring verse, or the Conjureverse, or however you want to say it. The film universe that was first started back in 2013 with The Conjuring. Now the Conjuring verse consists of The Conjuring 2, Annabelle, and Annabelle Creation. And of course, since this is the start of the new Super Series, we will be starting with 2013's The Conjuring. Conjuring was directed by James Wan and stars Patrick Wilson, Vera Farmiga, and Lily Taylor. The story follows the Warrens, Ed and Lorraine Warren, played by Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga, as they investigate paranormal activity going on within the Perron family's new home. And just so you know, this was based on a true story. Ed and Lorraine Warren are real people. This family is real. There is pictures of them at the end of the movie. Yeah, a little scary. So to start, guys, very top of the positive list is actually the leads, with Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga playing Ed and Lorraine Warren. They're so good at their job, not only the acting job, but portraying these characters. They're real life people. I think as of right now, currently, Ed has passed away in real life, but Lorraine is still living and going today, and I believe she's actually seen these films. But yeah, the point is that they play these characters so well, these demonologists.
We prefer to be known simply as Ed and Lorraine Warren.
You feel like they really know what they're talking about. Anytime they're trying to explain something, they don't need to like flip through a book, they don't need to be like a guess or make assumptions, they just know it. Like as soon as these people, the Perron family, are feeding them information, they're like, this means this means that, this means this is how we get rid of that, this is how we get rid of that. No wonder that pretty much any major haunting that you've ever heard of in reality, they have their name attached to it in some form or another. Next is the atmosphere of this movie, guys. The atmosphere of this movie is terrifying. The whole thing, you feel creeped out the whole movie, even when you don't have to be. Just like the atmosphere of the movie and just almost like the color palette of this movie, and especially the score, just them walking outside, them moving into the house, them just chatting. You just always feel this underlying eeriness. It just always feels creepy no matter what. And then especially when things are actually going down, it is extremely creepy. You're always waiting for something to happen, always anticipating the next scare, the next thing, and you're always just trying to kind of figure out what's going on. James Wan is a master at that in horror films. If you've seen any of his horror films, whether it's Saw, Insidious, he's just so phenomenal at delivering that just creepy, intense atmosphere all the time, and this movie showcases it in its most flawless effect. And next is just the camera work in this movie. I really enjoy the camera work, actually. It's just very slick and very smooth movements. There's a lot of the times where I don't feel like it actually was one take, but it's made to feel like one take, or you're just following a character, or if someone's like, one of the characters are looking under the bed. That was something I noticed was done very well. You pan behind their head, you look under the bed, and then as they lift back up, the camera comes back up, turns. It's all just this very smooth kind of gliding movement throughout the whole movie, and I thought that was very well done, especially too, even when it is panning around to some of the jump scares. It's very just smooth transitions with the characters looking one way, looking another, to things appearing in the background where just kind of like a blink and you'll miss it moment. The camera work in this movie is very, very well done, and it lends to the atmosphere a great amount as well. If it wasn't for the camera work, if it was more choppy, if it wasn't as smooth, if it was more shaky camera or something like that, it would have taken away from this movie a lot. Next is just the intense moments in this movie, or the more tense moments, I guess. The things that I touched on with the atmosphere, but just where you're always anticipating something to happen, whether you see something in the background, you're waiting for something to come out of it, or you just know, like, you can hear the music heightening, or the music cuts off completely, or like something is just kind of leading in, like a character is just kind of following a spirit down a hallway or something like that. You're always just waiting for these moments to happen. You're always like wincing and waiting for the scare or waiting for something to happen, and you're just always like, like you don't want to watch, but you want to watch because you want to see what happens. A good chunk of horror movies nowadays are PG-13, and The Conjuring really doesn't do anything different than those besides this stuff here with the atmosphere and the intensity. The Conjuring is about the same as almost any other horror movie, but it's just so intense at some moments, so like just kind of take your breath away and make you shudder, that it actually deserved its R rating just on the horrifying nature of this movie alone. It's really not that gory. I don't know if there's like little to any swearing in this movie at all. It's just really just that intense and that atmospheric that they couldn't allow anyone under the age of 18 to see this movie. It is that horrifying. And next is just like the disturbing and just very unnerving imagery in this movie. It's just some super really unsettling stuff, whether it's like the look of the actual spirits that are haunting the place, or just kind of, like I said, the things you see in the background, or just kind of the creepy nature of the inner workings of the house overall, especially kind of the cellar, and later on they just kind of like the inner workings of the house, like literally behind the walls and stuff. Everything in this movie is just super unsettling and super just kind of dingy looking and just dusty and old, and it just kind of has this kind of creepy, decaying look to it. And next is the fact that it feels real to me. You don't get this in a lot of horror movies, and it's almost like based on a true story or based on real life or this really happened or whatever is slapped on almost every horror movie. It feels like a selling gimmick, like something just to get people to the movie because, you know, oh, this really happened. A lot of other movies, I don't find it. This movie, I feel it. I feel it a lot. The spirits seem real, the story seems, although rushed, we'll touch on that later, but real, and it feels like a real family. Like these people, these 5 girls, I believe it is, 5 sisters, you have the pictures of this family, it's a real family, and they just portray that so perfectly. In this house, it almost looks like the actual real life house. It's the first time that I've seen a movie that said based on a true story that actually felt like a true story, and that is part of this movie that to me makes it so horrifying, is because I feel like it could happen to anyone. In the last 2 parts, this movie does progressively get scarier. It's like the way the possession works. It kind of starts with just the whispers and the footsteps, then it gets a bit more aggressive, and then into full-on possession. That's almost like the way I felt this movie worked too. Just kind of start off with the little bits and pieces, just kind of little things that you notice in the background, or like the clock stopping at 3:07, and just little bits and pieces, and then it kind of gets a bit more intense where the ghosts get a bit more aggressive. They start slamming doors and grabbing people, and then it gets into full-blown just shit your pants horror by the end of it. So the fact that the movie just kind of progresses like the way that they describe possession works, I thought not only was that a good just kind of dynamic for the movie, but yeah, it made the movie really good. It didn't try to beat you over the head with the same thing over and over again where it's just jump scare, jump scare, jump scare. It just kind of had this nice natural flow to it where it got progressively scarier. And last is just 2 scenes in particular in this movie that you should keep an eye out for. There's one scene, and I'm sure you'll know what I'm talking about, down in the cellar. That was bloody horrifying. I was just crying almost at that point. And then pretty much the last act of this movie is probably the most intense in a horror movie that I've experienced, I would dare say. Now for the middle ground, let's get through it very quickly, and that's jump scares, because sometimes jump scares can be used, they're very gimmicky, and they're just very stupid, they're just used to make you jump, and if the only thing a horror movie has going for it is just the jump scares that made you go, whew, and then laugh it off 2 seconds later, that's a bad horror movie. Jump scares do not make a horror movie, but there are times where jump scares can be used effectively, they can be used for a good reason, and they can actually sometimes even help the story. This lands in the middle ground because it does have some of those gimmicky jump scares, and especially jump scares that I really hate are fake out jump scares where it's just kind of like the intense music, or the music shuts off, and then it's like, hey, and then it makes you jump and it makes this loud crashing sound, but it's really just like the husband or the kid walking in being like, what are you looking at, you know? That stuff, the fake out jump scares, they really annoy me, and there are some of those in this movie, but there are also a lot of really effective and well used jump scares, very well placed, so it has a mixture of both, so I can't knock it for the jump scares being cheap, but I also can't praise it for the jump scares being used effectively, because it kind of does both. So it lands in the middle ground. And the 2 issues in this movie that I have, it's just the fact that it's such a generic plot line. Family moves into a new house, the new house is haunted, call the paranormal investigators. You've seen it multiple times before, 100 times before, 1,000 times before, and even from James Wan, you've seen it a couple times before. Not to say it doesn't work, because it can work if done the right way. And this is done the right way, but I can't just say, hey, this is something new and original, and it's a landmark on the horror genre, because it kind of really isn't. And the next negative, and the last one actually, is just kind of the explanation you get for the hauntings. It happens like that. Literally, 2 seconds, it's done. I'm pretty sure it's almost in the same day that Ed and Lorraine Warren actually go to the house to see if it really is haunted. It's like in the exact same day. They get to the house later on, and then all of a sudden, Vera Farmiga's Lorraine Warren just has like a folder of everything that's ever happened to this house, like when it was built, all the people that were killed in it, how they were killed in it, every little detail of this movie. And I'm like, you just have this folder sitting around? Did you go to the church? There's no internet. It's set in the 70s, so like, where the hell did all this information come from? And then it's literally like, I just felt like they didn't have to figure out anything on their own. It was literally just here is a folder I found with no explanation on how I found it. That has every little single bit of information we need about this house and anything that's ever happened in it. Ever. And that kind of bothered me too, how really rushed that was. Overall, guys, I love this movie as a horror movie. It's probably my favorite, like, scary horror movie. You know, there are other movies that have the icon status, of course, like Halloween or John Carpenter's The Thing, that would definitely hold as, like, my favorite horror movie. But this movie, when it comes to actually genuinely scaring me to my core, that is this movie. I haven't never gotten this feeling from a horror movie before, except from this one, not even the sequel. That feeling that you get when you're in a really good haunted house, where you constantly feel like you're about to be grabbed, you're about to be screamed at, something's gonna pop out at you, but in reality, That's the way I get watching this movie. I'm watching it on the screen, and I'm afraid to look into the dark corner in my room. I'm afraid for my foot to hang over the bed. I'm afraid to go to the bathroom. I have never gotten that from a horror movie except for this one. This one nails it home. To summarize for this movie, the cast is great, the leads especially are phenomenal, the atmosphere and the score are done so well, the camera work is very smooth, there's so many intense moments in this as well as very unsettling and disturbing imagery. It feels like real life events with a real life family. The movie just progressively gets scary, and two scenes in particular are one scene that I can't really mention, but it's in the cellar. You'll know what I'm talking about when you see it, and the last act of this movie are super intense. The middle ground is the jump scares. Some are gimmickly and cheaply used, and there's a lot of fake out ones in there too, but some of them are used very effectively and they're very well done. And as for the negatives, guys, it's a very generic plot, as well as the explanation for the hauntings is done very quickly with, like I said, like snap your fingers, 2 seconds, and they just have all the information they need with no explanation of how they got it or anything like that. With all that being said though, guys, like I said, this is probably my favorite horror movie. So with that being said, guys, I'm going to be giving The Conjuring an 8 out of 10. So guys, if you like this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and comment. Let me know, what's your favorite scary horror movie? Not just horror movie in general, because I know you guys are going to be like Halloween, The Thing. I know those are great horror movies, but what's one that really scared you to death? What is it, guys? Let me know. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and that's a wrap.